All right, guys. So today we're going to talk about something called percent of change. Okay, so let me give you an example of percent of change. Let's say Black Friday was just here just a bit ago. All right, and I'd love to use electronics because everyone seems to love buying electronics on Black Friday. Okay, and that's where some of the big sales are. But it works better with if I talk about clothing. All right, so let's say, and there's still Black Friday for clothing. Let's say you go to your choice of, go to some high-end clothing store in the mall, all right? And you go there and you're looking at this really nice shirt. And this really nice shirt, okay, or blouse for you ladies, let's say this thing is $52, okay? It's $52. No, you have that it's like a little white tag, right? And it has a little barcode that they can maybe scan it. And it has that price that's attached to that tag that the manufacturer made, $52. But, and you guys have probably seen this before, the company themselves, or they have an employee go and have like this little machine, and they'll take it and put like a little sticker over the old price, and it'll say something like, where it was, 52 bucks, it will be like $28.99. It's on sale for $28.99, okay? So, here's what today's lesson is all about. What is that sale that's going on? Meaning, it dropped obviously in price. What percentage did it drop? What percent did it change? Okay, that's what it was. 50% off? Was it 35% off? Was it? Okay, that's kind of what we're talking about. All right, that's the whole idea of today's lesson. All right, so with that said, in your notes, green on the left, notes on the right. That's our first word here, and that is our phrase, I should say. Percent of change, everyone?
Percent of change.
All right, so here's what your book says it is. It's a ratio that compares the change in quantity to the original amount. It's a ratio that compares its change in quantity to the original amount. Okay, so here's what we have here. Go to your little box off to the right. And go ahead and write this. I'll write it with you guys. Write this as in fraction form, okay? Because it's a ratio. Go ahead and put amount of change over the original amount. Amount of change over the original amount. Okay? Now, kind of like before we went on vacation, the lesson we're talking about percent equation, and I had you guys write the percent equation to always look back to and build all of your problems off of that. Well, that's going to be this when we get to our lessons. All right. So this is a ratio that we're going to use to get to our answer. Now, with percent of change, there's two types of percent of changes. All right. So you have a percent of change. There's two types, and this kind of will be more common sense after we talk about them. Here we go. The first one is called a percent of increase. Everyone?
Percent of increase.
All right, so here's what the book says. It's a positive percent of change. A positive percent of change. So while this isn't in percent form, here would be like an example of maybe a real life problem. So in your little box there, go ahead and put something started off at $120 and it went up to $150. That would be a percent of increase. It went up in price. Percent of increase. You'd find a percent of increase to a problem like that. Now, remember I said there's two types of percent of change. Percent of increase is one, and if you're probably kind of thinking ahead, you probably know what the next one is. It's percent of decrease. Everyone?
Percent of decrease.
So here's what your book says. This is a negative percent of change. A negative percent of change. Percent of decrease, a negative percent of change. So go ahead and write this down in your little box. $150 to $120. It's going the opposite way, right? It's dropping in price. That's why it's you'd find a percent of decrease for a problem like that. Okay. All right, questions on any of the vocab words? All right, go ahead then and grab your book, and let's go ahead and do some problems together. Go ahead and flip to page 146. 146. 146. All right, eyes up here when you're ready. All right. A lot of you guys are ready to go. Thank you. All right, so on page 146, let's go ahead and read the directions because the directions are pretty important on today's homework. All right, there's a couple little things involved that we need to make sure that we're doing. Okay, so here we go. On page 146, the bold words right up at the top there under guided practice. Here we go. Find each percent of
change.
Everyone's with me, right? Let's try this again. Find each percent of change. Round to the nearest whole percent if necessary. State whether the percent of change is an
Increase.
or a decrease. Okay, so a couple of things to remember that you need to make sure you remember. Okay, those of you that when you round, you're always rounding like getting rid of the decimal. Well, today's your lucky day because that is what you need to do. You need to round to the nearest whole percent, meaning you're getting rid of anything to the right of the decimal point. All right. The other thing is it says state whether the percent of change is an increase or decrease. Okay? Guys, please listen. That is such a minor thing, but it is in the directions. I hate to see you guys do all of your work and not do any of those and get all your answers wrong. So please be careful of that. Okay? So here we go. All right. Problem number 1 says it's starting off with 30 inches and it's going to 24 inches. So, I don't know, let's just say you're buying yourself a pair of pants and this is the inseams, right? How long the legs are. So you're looking at 30-inch inseam and you need to hem it, meaning shrink it to 24 inches, okay, by sewing or whatever else. All right, so we need to find out, okay, in this case, what's the percent of change in this problem. So here we go. So, step 1. Step 1, put a little star by it. Go to the very top of your page because this is just going to be a reference point, just like we've done in other lessons. All right? So, Julian, as we go ahead and write this down, all right, we have, remember the ratio is on the top is the amount of change. That's what goes on top is the amount of change over the original amount. So we're going to put the amount of change on top as a fraction over the original amount. Okay, so if you have no idea what that means, that's why we're doing the problem. So here we go. So going back down to our problem, go ahead and go at step 2. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to find out what the amount of change is. All right, and you might already be able to do this in your head, but for note purposes, write this down. So when you look at it later, you'll remember. To find out how much it changes, it's going from 30 to 24. All you're doing is you're subtracting the 2. So the number of inches it changed was 6 inches. So we're going to put the amount of change being 6 inches on top, 6. Okay? Step 3. Write down the original amount. So, guys, we need to remember what the word original means. Okay? And some of us know it. Some of us get confused, especially when it comes to word problems that we're going to do in a bit. Okay? The word original means, some people will say start, beginning, first. All right? Those are all like things that people have said in the past, okay, and they're all right they're all correct if you think of them in a certain way. Okay? So the original amount is what basically comes first in chronological order. And most of these you could put a story to. So chronological order means in real time, what comes first. Okay? So for example, if I went and bought these pair, I'm just making up the story, right? But if I bought these pair of pants and they're 30 inches when I bought them, and then I bought them yesterday, I guess, but they're 30 inches, and then today I take them to go get them hemmed at a store, and they're going to hem them, or they're going to shrink them to 24 inches. Well, 30 inches, when I first bought them, that was the original size. That was what came first in chronological order. Now, people think, it's whatever's labeled first, especially when they get to word problems. They go, whatever number comes first. No, that's not the original. Because if it says, I hemmed my pants today, and I shrunk them up to 24 inches. When I bought them, they were 30 inches. Well, I mentioned 24. That doesn't mean that's the original amount. The original is how much it was in chronological order. So in this case, we started with 30. So that's what I go and put down on the bottom, is 30. Now here's the thing. This here is not, let me say this again. This is actually our answer. I like calling this the fraction of change. The reason is because this is our answer, but it's in fraction form, and that's not what we want in this whole lesson. This is the fraction version. So listen, here I have two choices at this point, okay? And I guess it's best for me to say step 4 is I need to put it in percent form. Now I have two choices. I can put this over 100 and use cross products, or I can change this to a decimal, then change the decimal to a percent. So there's just a couple of different ways. Bottom line is I need to change that to a percent. So 6 over 30. Now listen, I'm going to choose, because I've got my little friend here called a calculator, I'm going to choose to change it to a decimal. So here's how you do it using a calculator. 6 divided by 30. 6 divided by 30. Now listen, if I was going to do this longhand, meaning without a calculator, don't forget, it's 6 divided by 30. That's how you would write it right there. Okay? Don't put the 6 on the outside. It's bottom and the top. But in your calculator, you go 6 divided by 30. I'm going to hit the equal sign, and I have 0.2. So I'm not done, right? That is only a decimal. So we have like the fraction of change and decimal of change. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and change that decimal to a percent. And we've talked a lot about this, right? Just by moving it 2 times to the right. So in the end, ladies and gentlemen, this is 20%. Now, be careful. We'll call this step star. Oops. Go ahead and put this down. Round. Do we need to round this? Sorry, the N is squeezed in there. Do we need to round this? No, there's no decimal. It says round to the nearest whole percent, but there's no decimal here. It's already rounded for us. Now comes step 5, and this is the other little thing you don't want to forget. The directions state whether it's an increase or decrease. Here's how you do it. You go back up to your original problem. It's going from 30, that's the original, to 24, that's the new one. 30 to 24. So guys, is it getting larger or smaller?
Smaller.
Smaller. So is that an increase or decrease?
Decrease.
It's a decrease. So our answer, our final answer is a 20% decrease. Now I know there are 5 steps, almost 6 steps if you count step star, right? But ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to. You already did step 1. You don't have to do that for every problem if you don't want to. All right. And then step 2, I mean that for some of the problems that'll be mental math. You just put that over. And then this one, we talked a lot about what original means, but if you know what original means, you'll be able to get that quick. And if you have this, you're just punching that in and moving the decimal. I mean, this thing, without talking about it, might take me 15 to 20 seconds to do this problem. It's not very long. Of course, you have to know how to do it first. And so practicing right now will take a little longer, of course. But what I'm getting at is these problems, once you get good at them, won't take you very long. Okay? All right, any questions about this type of problem before I have you try one? Okay, here we go. Problem number 2 on page 147. So off your homework, problem number 2. All right, go. Okay, how many of you need more time? Okay. Listen, those of you that did it already and feel comfortable, you can work on the other 6 of them up at the top there. They're all the same type of problem, same skill. Okay, those of you still working on that, go ahead and get that done. Give you guys a little more time. All right. How many of you still need more time? Okay, about 15 seconds, and then I'm going to have you guys share. All right. Okay, 30 seconds. Go ahead and turn to a neighbor and share. Go.
I got an increase of 40%. How did you get it to be a decrease?
Actually, I was confused.
Alright, so you're supposed to do 140 minus 100. It would equal 40. 40 over 100, which would be 100 would be the original size. And then you would do 40 divided by 100.4 and then move the decimal over twice to get 40%.
Okay, here we go. So our problem was 100 acres to 140 acres. I don't know what happened. Maybe they had 100 acres and they bought the extra there and their land grew. So here we go. Just looking for answers to start with. Just checking in on what your guys' answers are. All right, so let's see. Seats, number 13. For a 40% increase. All right. Agree, disagree with that. What do you guys think? Okay. A lot of agreements. All right. Anyone have something different they want to share? Okay. Let's check this out. See if the majority of you guys are right. Here we go. So, step 1, right, is already up here. Amount of change over original amount. So step 2 is I need to find the amount of change. Now listen, I'm going to write this down, but I bet almost all of you guys can do that in your head, right? It's just the amount of change is 40. The original amount is how much it started with. So they started with 100 acres, so that's over 100. Now here's the neat thing, right? The next part is changing it to a percent. Now, I could use my calculator, make it into a decimal, and it should have come out to 0.4, okay, and then move that decimal over twice. But some of you guys may have realized it's already over 100. It's already set for us. You're not going to get too many like this, but it's already set. 40 over 100 is 40%. Now, of course, with the last part, right, there's no rounding involved. But with step 5, I'm taking a look. It's going from 100 to 140, meaning it's getting larger. And if it's getting larger, then that means there is an increase. So a 40% increase. Nicely done. Okay, those of you that didn't have that, questions? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a word problem. Let's take a look on your homework, problem number 9. Okay, to save us a little bit of time, I'm not going to read the directions because the directions are exactly the same as what we just read. All right, so just kind of keep that in mind. We have to round to the nearest whole percent. Don't forget your increase, decrease word. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and close read number 9, though. 3 months ago, Santos could walk 2 miles in 40 minutes. Today, he can walk 2 miles in 25 minutes. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this with you is because we see not 2 numbers, we see 4 numbers. As a matter of fact, they're rates, right? We talked lately about rates. 2 miles in 40 minutes, that's a rate. It's not a unit rate, it's a rate, though. The next one is 2 miles in 25 minutes. Here's what I want to point out. All they tell you about the 2 miles is that he's not walking a shorter or a longer distance. He's just walking the same distance. Okay? So what is actually changing here? The time, right? The time. The amount of time it takes him to walk those same 2 miles. That's what's changing. So the 2 miles we don't even need to worry about. We're just worried about the amount of time, which is the minutes. So here's a nice part about this problem. I'm just doing a word problem with you, going over one, but the steps are exactly the same. So here we go. Here's what I need to follow. So step 2 is I need to know the amount of change. Well, it's changing from 40 to 25. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract. And that gives me 15. So it's a change in 15 minutes. So I'm going to put my 15 on the top because that's where the amount of change goes. On the bottom is the original amount. So remember, original is according to a timeline. That's what it means by chronological order, by time. So if I take a look, one of the walks happened 3 months ago. The other walk happened today, it says. Well, 3 months ago is what happened first. That is the 40. So the 40 minutes, it's going from 40 to 25. Okay? So the original is 3 months ago. It's 40. All right, so here we go. I'm going to take my fraction of change here, and I'm going to change it to a decimal. So I punch in 15 divided by 40 equals, and I come out with 375 thousandths. Now, I'm going to then change it to a decimal. I'm sorry, it's into a percent by moving it 2 times. So it ends up being 37.5%. However, step star says I need to round to the nearest whole number. So remember, we look to the right, the digit to the right. The 5 and higher, right, makes this round up. So what we have is 38%. Now comes, don't forget, step 5, right? The increase, decrease part. It went from 40. He got faster, yes, but it went from 40 to 25. So when it comes to time, there was a 38% decrease in the amount of time it took him. And there's our answer. Okay, questions on that one? All right, so here we go. Try out the very next problem, number 10. I'll check in with you guys in about 1 minute. Number 10, go. Okay. How many of you still need more time on that problem? All right. Those of you that are already finished, get going on the rest of your homework. Those are the only two type of problems that you'll see. So a couple of extra challenge problems, but you'll use the same exact thought process in this skill. Okay, so go ahead and continue. I'll check in with you guys in just about 30 seconds or so. Okay, how many of you are still working on it? Okay, 30 seconds. Go ahead and share with your neighbor. Go.
I got a decrease.
I got an increase. Because this is
Oh yeah, for number 10, my bad. Sorry. Yeah.
2%.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Problem number 10. So it said, last school year, the enrollment of Genoa Middle School was 465 students. This year, the enrollment is 525. So, guys, remember, the very first step, obviously, is done for us. We need to make sure we put the amount of change. So it went from 465 to 525. So I'm going to go ahead and find out what is the difference in those two amount of students. That's what enrollment means, right? So 525 minus 465. Okay, I have a calculator. I'm just going to use that. 525 minus 465 equals 60. That's our amount of change. So it changed by 60 students. Now the original amount, well, they have this year and last year. Well, last year was what comes first in chronological order, right, in time. So last year was 465. So that's what is that's our bottom number. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, I'm going to change it to a decimal. So 60 divided by 465 equals, and look at that ugly decimal. That's okay. We're going to round here. I'm going to just kind of go this far. I don't need to go any further. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, move the decimal over 2 times, right, to change it to a percent. Something like that. But remember, it's the nearest whole percent. So here's your whole number, your ones. So the 9 makes the 2 go up to a 3. So we end up with 13%. Now don't forget, we just did step star, right? I'm going to go ahead. Don't forget your increase, decrease. Bless you. It went from 465 to 525. So this is the start. That's what it actually increased in the number of students. And so that is a 13% increase. Oops. All right. Questions? In a word problem, so without looking there, okay, it could have said, at Genoa Middle School this year, there were 525 students. Last year, there was 465 students. What's the percentage? You see that? So I just reworded the paragraph. And so, yeah, don't get caught up in that because on your test. That's a great question, though. So you guys have to think in chronological order what happened. And so just, yeah, read that and be careful with that. But you're right. I mean, coincidentally, the first one labeled there is the first, the way it's worded. All right, guys. Other questions? Okay. All right. Percent of change.